Grace and peace be with all of you. Please be seated. It's so lovely to see how many of you are all of a sudden here. So Jesus calls his disciples little children. And I don't know how many of you know ancient Greek, but in ancient Greek, there were many different words for child. And for those of you who have studied other languages, you know that every language, every culture has words that express the reality of those people. So for us, a child is a child is a child. But for the Greeks, this was a much more complicated and nuanced idea. So I'm going to share 3 of those possible words in Greek and start by telling you a little bit about the one that Jesus uses in our gospel reading today. So the first one, pais, refers to a child who would specifically be in about the age range of 7 to 14. So someone who's left their mother's side and has entered into whatever sort of training or apprenticeship towards adulthood their father had decided was appropriate for them. And what was specific to this word, pais, was not just the age and sort of the stage of life, but specifically that this was a child who needed to be taught, needed to be developed, needed to be protected. So they were sort of not yet formed. And this same word would have been used not just for sort of children in training growing up, but this sort of word also was used to refer to slaves. So there is certainly an element of status in it and the responsibility of those in higher authority to protect and lead this sort of child. Then there is the nepios. Nepios was a bit more about the nature of a child, that is, immature, foolish, simple. And we do use the word child in that way. Oh, stop being such a child, right? But in the ancient Greek, they had an actual term that referred to exactly this quality. Now, the word that Jesus chooses, teknia, was a diminutive. I don't know, do people know what diminutive is? It's a way in a language of making something smaller and more affectionate. So for example, in English we might call our children little munchkin, right? But in a lot of languages, you can take the actual word or the actual name and add a little suffix or something to it, and it will make it smaller and more affectionate. We can't really do that in English, but that's what Jesus has done here. And this word, teknon without the diminutive, was a word that meant offspring or descendants. And it was intended to convey belonging and identity. So your teknon could be your descendants, or it could be your offspring that would take your family name into the future. If you were a teacher, you would use this word to refer to your students because they would learn what you had to teach them and they would carry it forward. And you may recall there are places in the Bible when, for example, you might hear the phrase wisdom's children, right? That's this word, teknon. So the children, the teknon of something or someone were the ones who absorbed the lessons, carried on the deep identity of whatever it was through time. So this is the word that Jesus has chosen to talk to his disciples. And I think it's interesting that this reading has fallen on what we're calling Graduation Sunday, because I think our graduates are entering into exactly the sort of transition that Jesus is preparing his disciples for. Jesus has spent time with them, loved them, taught them, modeled his deepest hopes for how they will live. And I know that the parents of our graduates have done exactly that. And all of you in the room who are parents have done that for and with your children, or are doing it now. And our parents did it for us. And then what happens? Our children enter into some sort of transition, and they leave behind the old and enter into a new context, maybe a new community, a new place, a new way of life, a new role. And they have to navigate somehow those parts of themselves that they will claim and hold on to in that new environment, and the ones they will let go of to make room for new learning and new understandings of how to be who they are in that new place. And it's not just young people that undergo these sorts of transitions. If you think about it, we are doing this all the time. Let's say, for example, when you first become a parent, how do you continue to be the person you have always been and then also become a mother and a father? What does that mean? How do you do that? Or maybe you take on a new career, or maybe you retire, or you get married or divorced or widowed, or all of a sudden your whole life is changed by an illness. Sometimes these transitions are welcome, sometimes they're not, but regardless of whether or not we put a plus sign or a negative in front of them, they are always a mixed bag. Even the most joyful transitions make us nervous. We're not sure what lies ahead. There's some anxiety involved. And even the most negative transitions, as we reflect on them later in life, bring us some sort of learning and blessing and gratitude. And so this is, I think, the way human life works. We sort of coast for a while, and then we have one of these changes, one of these transitions. And if you look at our readings today, you can see exactly this, because if you think about it, this is the pattern of Christianity. Jesus is reaching deep into the tradition of Israel. He is a faithful Jew. He is pulling out the deepest, most fundamental aspects of his faith, and he is reflecting on them in new ways, offering new teachings, and ultimately, what he tells his disciples is, go out into new places. Take this deep truth, this deep identity of being a follower of mine, out into new contexts. Figure out how to be a follower of Jesus in Corinth, in Ephesus, in all the various places that we read about. in Acts and in the epistles. And the disciples themselves, they've spent 3 years living with Jesus and learning every lesson he has to teach them. And plus, this reading marks what is called the farewell discourse in John, which is several chapters of Jesus' final wisdom to them. He gives them all kinds of learnings. But then we look at the reading from Acts, and they are gobsmacked. We didn't expect this. What? All these animals? The Holy Spirit resting on Gentiles? And then we look at our reading from Revelation, and it's the same thing. All of a sudden, there will be this new Jerusalem, and God will not be out there, but God will dwell with us. And this is the challenge for all those disciples. How do we hang on to what is deeply true and fundamental, these things we have been taught and given? How do we hold on to our integrity, who we claim to be, who we claim to belong to, in new times and new places? And that's our job as Christians, not just the jobs of those first disciples. That's what we are called to do. And I think it's clear that we, as the Church of Good Shepherd, are exactly in that sort of moment. We made our way through COVID, right? And every time we came, there was some other rule, and we're watching the data. How do we still be church with all this stuff going on? And now we're post-COVID. But things are different. We have different people in the pews. We have different staffing arrangements. We have a different cultural context. The world has changed radically. How are we going to navigate this? How are we going to be community? How are we going to be a Christian community of faith in this new time and this new place? What are the deepest values that ground us in integrity and faithfulness? And how will we live into them? I think that's the question that the gospel is asking us today.